Welcome to the Drain Automobile Museum in Newport, Rhode Island. And today in our exhibition, What's the Super in Supercars, we're joined by two very special guests. The 1998 Mercedes CLK GTR Straßenwagen and its owner, Mr. Joel Molinari. Joel, thank you so much for joining us here and also for loaning this extraordinary car for our exhibition.
My pleasure, Donald. It's wonderful to share the car with the audience and the community, and for it to be around also such a wonderful group of friends, if you will.
Exactly, and one of the things, of course, this exhibition asks the question, what's the super in supercars? And without a doubt, in a room full of stars, this has stood out. Without a doubt, all of the visitor guests that have come have all commented on this car. And one of the things we try to do here at the Drain is to have people come into an exhibition, see cars that they know and love, and say, wow, it's great to see that again, and then see cars they've never seen before in their lives, and this is one of them. So the first question is, why this car for you, and what's your connection with this?
Wow, well, I'll try to make it a short story.
Take as long as you like.
In general, my history with cars is often, or pretty much most of the time, the most interesting and special cars come out of unexpected places or situations. So I certainly wasn't looking for this car because they're not easy to find, as you just mentioned. But good circumstances, good timing, good business outcome altogether made it such that I saw it. And I then really went into a bit of a deep dive on the history of the GT1 class and this car in particular, because I knew of it superficially in terms of the engine, of course, and the car itself, which looks kind of crazy, but I really didn't appreciate the effort and the engineering and the outcomes that were produced by the car. And so when I did that deep dive over the course of a couple weeks, I realized, wow, this actually is so many things that I love brought together into one. The first is, it's of my era, so it's a 1998 car, and I graduated college in '98. The second is, it's an engineering marvel, and I'm an engineer and maker, and so that cars in general appeal to me because of their engineering and because of the craftsmanship and the combination of art and science that goes into them. But this one in particular has all of the elements kind of gone to 11, so designed from scratch in 128 days, then winning 7 out of 11 races against McLaren F1 and Porsche GT1, which are no slouches, and really the sort of cost no object, winning is the main goal approach that you just don't find anymore these days.
Connecting with history, and it's first of all, it's wonderful to know, and our audience should know, that you are a real enthusiast, and you just explained your connection with the car, and to me, to have a very personal, very passionate connection with a car, to me, is the heart of collecting and sharing that passion with other people, and once again, thank you for that. And it's such an amazing thing to contemplate a car like this, because the entire idea of a car being designed to win, as you said, and also being able to be driven on the street. Now, obviously, it's not a car you can do your grocery shopping in, but when you have the opportunity to touch and live in history that way, it's extraordinary.
Absolutely. Well, I will tell you, I have done post office runs in this car, so I delivered some
small packages.
Yeah, they fit in, actually quite a medium-sized package. It fit in the passenger seat. So you can do post office runs and grocery. It's extremely compliant, much more so than you would expect from what it looks like. But it is highly usable relative to, of course, homologation race cars. But really the connection to the motorsports and homologation cars for me are really the focus of my interest, because they are designed for a purpose and then taken as close from that purpose as possible to make them streetable. And so you really have a pure distilled, as close to true automotive experience, if you will, as you can. So homologation cars and the stories around them are what's appealing to me in particular.
I'm particularly drawn as well to homologation cars because to me they're also a great connection to the wonderful days when a winning sports racing car could be driven from the factory or the shop to the track, raced, win, and driven back. You know, those wonderful old pictures of great teams driving to Le Mans and driving around the city from their garages in distant places is very resonant. And the idea that you can, again, as an engineering solution, devise a car and build a car that actually can function, that you're not sort of gripping your hands at every second thinking, oh my God, how am I going to make it to the next stoplight? And it's also a very interesting thing. Mercedes-Benz is one of those companies that is a very technologically driven company, and yet there's always a sense of nostalgia built in. I mean, this is an incredible, capable, state-of-the-art racing car built for the street, and you have the wonderful plaid seats, a nod to the 300 SLs.
That's right, and this particular interior, which is one of three, normally they're black leather, is what actually catalyzed my curiosity and search and trying to understand the car, because I had not seen it with that interior, but the connection with Sterling Moss and the fact also that this is chassis number 7 were really a phenomenal, unusual additional element in the narrative for this particular car. So it was a catalyst. I think, as you said, it's phenomenal and important to have the understanding of the history of where motorsports came from and the greats that came before. And so that is very much part of the narrative here, is that lineage back to the famous Mille.
And again, another emotional, passionate connection that exists between you and this car. Now, I have to ask the question, of course, which I certainly want to know. What's the driving experience of this car like?
The driving experience is surprising and unexpected, because it blends the two worlds, if you will, that the car represents, which is the motorsports part. So there's incredible loud sounds, noises, particularly from the straight cut gears and from the 7-liter naturally aspirated V12. So you're really enveloped in sound. You're also in what really is a cockpit more so than a cabin, because it's the seats are very close to the center and it's very comfy in there. So you have these extraordinary sounds, but the controls are incredibly tactile and delicate and easy to use. So the steering is sensitive, has great feedback from the road, and it's just very easy to use, whether around town or on the back roads. And the damping and the nimbleness of the car surprised me as well. I drove to and from Lime Rock, from Westport to Lime Rock, in the rain one of the mornings, and that's about 60 miles of mostly back roads, and it really was very, very easy and surprisingly comfortable to go on that road trip. So it's that fusion of Mercedes having to make a car that is streetable, particularly given the prices they were asking for the car, but also as pure as possible, that connection to the motorsports that they could have, and it's quite extreme in that sense too.
I would have loved to have run into you on Route 7 in Connecticut, behind you, saying one weekend morning, saying, "Oh my God, what the heck is that?" So in showing how indeed closely related this Strassen version is to the racing car, of course it has built-in hydraulic jacks. Let's see how that works, Joel.
Okay, so we've opened the command panel here on the side of the car, which contains the charging windshield fluid and the lift switch. So we're going to now set the car up, and we just hit the switch, and we have 3 jacks. There will come out 2 from the front of the car and 1 in the back, and we'll raise the car for when you need to do minor maintenance, change the wheels perhaps. No, it's just the tires were stuck on the ground.
The tires leaving the floor.
All right, I think we're there.
And now we're ready for our pit stop.
Now we're ready for our pit stop.
We can lower the car again.
All right.
So I can imagine also the fact that, again, you talk about the connection with motorsport and just the idea of driving on the road, on a nice country road, a car that was absolutely dominant on the racetracks. You know, you get the feeling of a car that, you know, this is sort of one of the specialties of Mercedes-Benz, to build a car for a purpose that does everything well. And I was also very heartened to hear your comments on the feel of the car, because one of my big challenges with a lot of high-performance, modern-ish cars, this is no longer, you know, time flies. 1998 is no longer modern. But
Semi-modern.
Semi-modern, exactly. Yes, I like that. Is the fact that they isolate you so much from the road experience, especially as they become more capable. The car does more for you with all sorts of traction aids and all this, so that you can drive it harder and harder until the car simply lets go. But you're saying this is a car that actually communicates so well, so you know what the car is doing all the time.
That's right, and actually I feel like these particular years, roughly the late 90s to early 2000s, are peak analog or semi-analog in the sense that this car has enough electronics where it's not a mechanical 1960s car where, you know, everything,
right.
Literally everything is mechanical. But it doesn't have enough electronics where there's interference with anything, meaning neither the steering, the throttle, the controls are pure. There is no stability control. There's some modest traction control just because of the enormous amount of torque in the engine. But yeah, this is sort of, I think, just the right amount of electronics where you can have amazing things like built-in air jack. But not enough where you're separated from the driving.
Let's ask you a question. One of the things that when I first saw this car and we were chatting about it in your garage, I said I really commented on the wheels, which I absolutely love, but they're not the original wheels for the car. Tell us about these wheels.
That's right. So these are just upsized wheels. The original wheels are 18 inches all around. That was the sort of best tire technology for the street at the time. A few years afterwards, the manufacturer of the wheels, which is OZ, offered uprated or upsized tires. So these are 20 and 19s, if I'm not mistaken. And they honestly, they're identical, just that small increase in size fills the wheels wells a little bit more. And most importantly, the tires now are a new formulation, and the tires make the biggest difference in these cars. And certainly you notice it even with Carrera GT from their original tires. When the new formulations came out, it makes the car much more gentle at the limit and predictable. And so that's why we put these wheels on. Well,
You have owned a number of very high-performance cars, including some modern high-performance Porsches. We're not going to do a direct Porsche-Mercedes comparison. We don't have to do that. But how does this car today, on the road and on the track, compare to the cars they're building now?
I think that might be a trick question in the sense that I don't think there's almost no comparison in the sense that what you need to do now as a manufacturer, just because of the regulations, for a car to be streetable and for it to be generally globally streetable, which is pretty much critical, especially to be in the U.S. market, means that you just have to have a certain amount of insulation from the driver, a certain amount of weight in the car, and even things like how many airbags do you need to have, if any, changes the nature of these cars. So I haven't seen, and I feel like all the offerings now, there aren't really homologation. They're not homologation cars. The closest, offerings are sort of pseudo connected to motorsports by way of maybe having the block from some race car, but they're not really motorsports cars. So personally, I don't see anything terribly exciting. I think there's quite a dilution of sort of the high performance world, and mostly products that are marketing material, not crafted for a purpose. If you will, the purpose is sell cars as opposed to win races.
One of the things that's also so very interesting about this is, of course, the fact that it's very important for a manufacturer to relate their racing cars to their street offerings. And so it's quite interesting to see things like the headlight design and the grille and even the taillights that look as if they're from a CLK production car, which of course they're not. I think it's really clever as well the way Mercedes has integrated these elements into the car, and they don't seem odd somehow.
It is it is a very beautiful fusion in the way that these kinds of things can be beautiful. If I'm not mistaken, this is Bruno Sacco design. Mm-hmm. So, the iconic headlights of that era, and of course having the badge, gives you the sense that this is absolutely a Mercedes. Everybody knows that design look. But then sort of the rest of the car is this, sort of motorsports long monster. And I think in that sense, it's really one of the more beautiful offerings because it looks both of its era and timeless.
Exactly.
And so it looks good 25 years later. It still look great in another 25 years. And I think that's the nature of special machines, art, and the things we love.
It speaks of its time and yet is timeless. It's absolutely correct. Joel, thank you so much for sharing this extraordinary car with us. And we invite you to come here to our gallery on Bellevue Avenue in Newport, Rhode Island to see this and all the great cars in the What's Super and Supercar exhibition until May 30th. Thanks.